Before Dirt Rally and WRC became household names, there was a golden era where the PlayStation 1 transformed rally racing from arcade curiosity to simulation obsession. These games didn't just entertain us, they preserved a moment in motorsport history when Colin McRae was dominating stages and rally fever gripped the world. Today we're diving into every rally game the PlayStation 1 had to offer, including 2 lost prototypes that never saw the light of day. From the technical masterpieces to the budget disasters, we'll break down the graphics, physics, terrain handling, weather systems and what made each game either a champion or a total write-off. Whether you're here for nostalgia or game preservation, then buckle up as we're about to take the ultimate rally challenge to the PlayStation's muddiest, most treacherous racing library. Ohlins Hyper Rally can be seen as quite possibly the earliest rally game ever to be released on the PlayStation, when developers were still learning the hardware's capabilities, but was heavily inspired by the success of Sega Rally, despite the game only releasing in Japan. As it is an early PS1 title, Ohlins Hyper Rally showed the hardware's growing pains. Car models were simple and angular with basic textures. The game used a distinct mix between pre-rendered backgrounds and 3D elements, creating an inconsistent visual style that felt experimental. Trackside scenery was minimal with flat, low detailed environments. The frame rate was somewhat inconsistent, dropping during busy sections, and the colour palette was dark and murky, making tracks difficult to read. Damage modelling was non-existent. Your car looked identical regardless of impacts. The physics engine was primitive even for 1996 standards. Cars felt like they were sliding on ice constantly, with minimal grip on any surface. Suspension physics were basic, with visible compression over bumps, but without realistic weight transfer or handling consequences. The control scheme was awkward, with unresponsive steering that made precise driving frustrating, and collisions were unpredictable. Sometimes you'd slide and bounce off barriers, other times you'd stick to them inexplicably. The game attempted a simulation approach but lacked technical sophistication to pull it off convincingly. Ohlins Hyper Rally featured different surfaces with gravel, tarmac, snow, but they all handled similarly slippery. Surface transitions had minimal impact on handling, removing the need for technique adaptation. Weather effects were visually non-existent. Stages at different times of day that changed light slightly, but no dynamic weather actually affecting conditions. Track design was basic with wide open roads and simple layouts, even though the game included the Ohlins suspension brand sponsorship, but it failed to translate that into meaningful suspension physics or customization settings. As it stands, however, Ohlins Hyper Rally is primarily interesting as a historical curiosity, an example of early PlayStation 1 rally attempts before developers mastered the hardware. It's rough, dated and difficult to recommend even for nostalgic purposes. The game was quickly overshadowed by superior titles like V-Rally and Colin McRae Rally that understood how to deliver satisfying rally racing, but it is worth acknowledging for completeness, but not worth playing unless you're studying the PlayStation 1's technical evolution and preservation history. V-Rally continued the arcade approach to the rally experience as it prioritised accessibility and arcade thrills over simulation accuracy, and it found a huge audience. It was often seen as the PlayStation's alternative to the legendary Sega Rally. The V-Rally car models were smooth and well detailed for 1997, featuring detailed environments, terrain, surfaces and clear designs. The game used a distinctive art style with vibrant saturated colours that made everything pop. Trackside scenery was realistic and more stylised. Exaggerated rock formations, bright vegetation and bold environmental features brought the scenery of each race to life. The split screen mode maintained decent performance, which was technically impressive. Damage was non-existent, unfortunately, basically featuring around cosmetic scratches and dents without affecting performance or view. But this was a pure arcade rally experience. Cars were more twitchy to control than later rally games, with less forgiving handling. The suspension was simplified. You compress over bumps and extend through dips, but it didn't affect handling it dramatically. What V-Rally did brilliantly was made you feel fast. The sense of speed was exhilarating, and mastering the controls made treading through forest stages thrilling even if it wasn't realistic. The 70s heavy rock soundtrack also added adrenaline-fueled pacing and fun to the experience to force you to push your driving skills to the absolute limit. The downside to V-Rally, however, would become apparent with the twitchy and floaty controls, spinning the car out without much effort, which presented a very different racing experience to that of Sega Rally and other rally titles released on the PlayStation. The game, however, did feature varied terrain types, but the differences were less pronounced than simulation titles. Gravel allowed dramatic slides, tarmac offered grip but still permitted arcade-style drifts, and snow was slippery without being frustrating. Weather effects made things marginally more slippery, and reduced visibility slightly. The stage design focused on flow and rhythm over technical challenge. Lots of fast sweeping sections mixed with tighter technical areas that rewarded momentum. But on a whole, V-Rally succeeded by knowing exactly what it wanted to be. An accessible, exciting arcade rally racer that anyone could pick up and enjoy, that was challenging, but getting to grips with and mastering the twitchy controls would leave for one of the best arcade rally experiences you could find on the PlayStation. It didn't have the depth of later games like Colin McRae, but it offered pure fun and was perfect for multiplayer sessions. The game did sell in high numbers and proved there was room for different approaches to rally racing. Sony's Rallycross took a unique approach. It mixed rally with off-road racing, creating a hybrid that emphasised realism with arcade gameplay. Rallycross also featured colourful, exaggerated visuals that matched its arcade nature. Car models were detailed with distinctive designs that made each vehicle recognisable. The game prioritised frame rate over visual complexity, maintaining smooth performance even during chaotic sequences. Trackside scenery was stylised rather than realistic, with bright colours and clear environmental features. And it featured multiple weather effects and time of day settings that changed the visual appearance of tracks significantly. Damage was mostly cosmetic but satisfying. You'd accumulate scratches and dents that showed your battle scars. This was pure arcade racing with off-road elements. Physics were detailed and yet unforgiving. Cars were easy to control with responsive handling that let you power slide dramatically. The suspension compressed over jumps and bumps with exaggerated animation that looked cool and also realistic. Each bump and crash would rattle the vehicle's suspension and made all the more noticeable with its realistic sound effects, making each landing feel like the car was splitting in half or falling apart. What made Rallycross unique was the tracks, which featured shortcuts and alternate routes that rewarded exploration. The handling differentiated between vehicles. Some cars were nimble and quick, while others were heavy and stable, but surface changes radically affected handling. Loose dirt and gravel would make your car slide uncontrollably, while mud patches would drastically reduce your speed, allowing other racers on the track to catch up fast. The game itself made great attempts at realistic terrain physics, focusing on maintaining accessible, fun handling regardless of surface. Weather affected visibility and track appearance more than physics. Rain made things look wet while dramatically changing grip, with snow and ice seeing you slide uncontrollably into walls or off cliffs. The track design was excellent, with multiple ramps, jumps and obstacles that encouraged experimentation. All these elements would play a massive role with the handling physics, as when you made a mistake and you toppled the car on its side or on its roof, you'd have to battle with the shoulder buttons on the controller to try and get the car upright again, which would take a lot of trial and error, which could drastically hinder your progress in each race. but it also added a lot of depth and realism to the experience, as you really had to think about what you were doing. If anything, when we look back, this was one of the first true realistic simulation experiences that you could find anywhere on any platform, and it did a good job. But when we look back at it, Rallycross did succeed with its suspension simulation physics, which offered chaotic racing fun that was perfect for multiplayer sessions. The off-road elements kept races unpredictable and exciting. If you approached it as an arcade racer rather than an authentic rally experience, you'd have a great time. The game spawned a sequel and influenced future rally off-road racing titles, proving that there was an audience for this hybrid approach. Total Drivin, also known as Grand Tour Racing 98 in some regions, was an ambitious title that set out to be more than just another racing game. It combined rally, off-road, exotic and circuit racing styles into one package, which was a bold concept that few games on the original PlayStation even attempted. While it didn't reach the technical refinement of better known racers, it offered impressive variety and remains one of the most underrated and underappreciated racing titles of the PlayStation era. For its time, Total Drivin delivered a wide range of environments, from dusty desert rally tracks to coastal roads and urban circuits. The visuals were simple but functional, focusing on speed and variety rather than flashy presentation. Each course carried its own atmosphere, and the game's dynamic lighting and time of day changes added to a surprising sense of immersion for a late 90s release. What set Total Drivin apart was its willingness to explore multiple racing disciplines within one framework. Players could experience the twitchy controls of rally cars, the stability of Grand Tour vehicles, and the raw power of exotic sports machines all within the same game. The handling leaned toward an arcade simulation blend, challenging at first but rewarding once mastered. Each vehicle type required a slightly different approach, encouraging players to adapt and refine their driving skills. The game's courses spanned a wide range of terrains: tarmac, gravel, snow and dirt, each giving a distinct flavour. While hardware limits meant that these surfaces didn't always feel dramatically different, the diversity of track design and vehicle selection kept the experience fresh. From high-speed assault runs to rugged rally stages, Total Drivin captured the spirit of all-terrain racing with enthusiasm and ambition. It's often overshadowed by bigger names like Gran Turismo, Colin McRae Rally and even Ridge Racer, but Total Drivin quietly carved out its own identity as a multi-genre racing experiment. It might not have achieved perfection in any one era, but its sheer variety, ambition and challenging gameplay made it a solid and memorable entry in the PlayStation's racing library. Today it stands as a real hidden gem, and one that dared to do it all, and it deserves far more recognition than it received. Screamer Rally was developed by Milestone as a PC rally game in 1997. A PlayStation port was planned and entered development but was ultimately cancelled, leaving PS1 owners at a loss without this ambitious title. The PC version of Screamer Rally was released and gained a cult following for its challenging physics and technical approach. Milestone planned to bring it to the PlayStation, capitalising on the rally racing boom of the time, but the port was cancelled during development. With very little prototype material that has surfaced, makes it one of the most mysterious cancellations in PlayStation racing history. Understanding the PC game gave us an insight into what PS1 players might have missed. Screamer Rally featured realistic physics with demanding handling that required proper rally technique. The game included various rally locations with distinct terrain types and weather conditions. Vehicle damage would have been comprehensive and affected performance. The graphics were impressive for 1997 PC standards, with detailed car models and varied environments, and the career mode was extensive with vehicle upgrades and progressive difficulty. The PS1 port likely faced significant technical challenges. Screamer Rally's physics engine and graphics may have been too demanding for the PlayStation hardware to handle without major compromises. Milestone may have struggled to even maintain the game's simulation depth while achieving acceptable performance on the console, and by the time these technical challenges became apparent, competing titles like Colin McRae Rally were already dominating the PlayStation 1 rally market, making a compromise port economically risky. The PC to console porting process of the late 1990s was technically challenging, and many ambitious attempts failed. Based on the PC version, PS1 players missed the technically demanding rally simulation that sat between Colin McRae's accessibility and Mobil 1 Rally Championship's hardcore approach. The game's career mode, progression and vehicle customization may have been more extensive than most PS1 rally titles. The game's career mode progression and vehicle customization may have been more extensive, and the track design would have featured technical stages with challenging terrain that rewarded skill development. But unlike Konami's International Rally, Screamer Rally does survive as a complete PC game, making preservation more straightforward. However, the cancelled PS1 port represents lost development work and the challenges of multi-platform development in the 1990s. Very few short PS1 prototypes have surfaced, suggesting that the port may have been cancelled very early in its development, and this makes Screamer Rally an interesting case study in the differences between PC and console gaming of the late 90s and the technical challenges developers faced. While the PC version of Screamer Rally remains playable for those interested in 1990s rally gaming history, the cancelled port represents a missed opportunity. PS1 players would have benefited from Milestone's simulation approach and technical ambition. However, the PS1's technical limitations and the strong existing rally library, the cancellation may have been the right decision. The PC version stands as what might have been, and for preservation enthusiasts, it's worth experiencing the game as it was intended rather than wondering about a compromised port. If you are getting value from the video so far, make sure to subscribe and leave a like or even hype the video so that it can reach more retro gaming enthusiasts who also love rally games. And also be sure to check out my Patreon page where you'll get exclusive access to features and member live streams, bringing more PlayStation 1 content to you if you're interested in supporting the channel, and it would be awesome if you do. Released in 1998, Rally de Africa brought a distinctly vibrant take on the off-road racing genre to the PlayStation. While it arrived when the popularity of rally games were beginning to take off, this title managed to stand out by offering something fresh. A full rally experience set entirely across the varied landscapes of Africa. With its upbeat arcade-style gameplay and exotic setting, Rally de Africa felt like the PlayStation's own answer to Sega Rally from the arcade and even the Sega Saturn era. For its time, Rally de Africa delivered a warm and colourful aesthetic that captured the spirit of African rally environments. From dusty savannas to desert trails and rugged mountain passes, the game created a distinct sense of place not often seen in PS1 racers. The car models were cleanly rendered and the game maintained a consistent frame rate throughout fast-paced races. While not as detailed as higher budget releases, its smooth performance and bright visual style gave it a strong arcade feel that suited its gameplay perfectly. Rather than chasing pure simulation, Rally de Africa embraced embraced the accessible pick-up-and-play handling style that defined classic arcade racers. The cars were responsive and easy to control, encouraging fast driving, long slides and confident cornering. It struck a nice balance between challenge and fun, easy to enjoy for newcomers but still satisfying for players looking to master each stage. The game emphasised momentum and flow over realism, echoing the energetic driving feel of Sega Rally while carving its own identity on the PlayStation hardware. But the main standout feature of Rally d'Africa was its setting. Few rally titles of the era focused exclusively on African locations, and the game used that to its advantage. Races spanned dry deserts, dense jungle trails and open savannas, offering visual and environmental variety across its stages. While weather effects were minimal, the combination of unique backdrops and lively atmosphere helped it stand apart from more traditional European rally settings of the time. Rally d'Africa may not have carried the prestige of Colin McRae Rally or V-Rally 2, but it offered a distinctive and highly enjoyable arcade rally experience that filled an important gap in the PlayStation 1's racing lineup. It simply is the PlayStation's answer to Sega Rally. With its colourful environments, fast-paced gameplay and Sega-inspired flair, it stands as one of the more underrated and underappreciated rally gems of its generation. A hidden gem that gave PlayStation players their own taste of that classic arcade rally energy. Its only real downside is that the game never got a release outside of Japan, and there is no doubt that if it had been made available in other regions, it could easily have stood on the podium with other successful rally games found on the PlayStation. Colin McRae Rally, when it released in 1998, set a statement that would change the world of rally racing games forever. Codemasters partnered with the 1995 World Rally Championship winner to create what many consider the first true rally simulation experience on consoles. The game impressed with detailed car models for its time, featuring officially licensed vehicles including the iconic Subaru Impreza and Ford Escort RS Cosworth, among many others. The trackside details included spectators, trees and environmental objects that made racing an interesting challenge. The damage modelling was highly detailed as you watch your bonnet crumple after a heavy impact, affecting your view and making races genuinely tense. This is where Colin McRae Rally made its mark. The physics engine emphasised weight transfer. You could feel the suspension compress over crests and extend through dips. The game demanded proper rally technique: brake before the corner, turn in and power out. Handbrake turns were essential for tight hairpins, and the car responded differently based on whether you were on tarmac, gravel or snow, with gravel offering loose sliding handling and tarmac providing grip but punishing mistakes with terminal understeer. The countries and regions you raced on offered distinct environments: Finland's high-speed gravel jumps, Sweden's treacherous snow and ice, Kenya's rough safari terrain, UK and New Zealand's murky and muddy country lanes, and Australia's mixed surface stages. Weather effects were effective and functional. Rain made tarmac slippery and reduced visibility, while dry conditions offered maximum grip. The co-driver calls were clear and essential, though they could sometimes feel slightly delayed on complex stages. Colin McRae Rally set the template. It wasn't perfect, but it delivered authentic rally racing that console gamers had never experienced. Coupled with the vast variety of tracks and cars on offer, you got tons of value for your time. This was the foundation that future rally games would build upon.
Go. 1 right, 5 left, into 2 left. Over crest, into 2 left. Over crest, into 2 left. Bump, K-bank, bump, 5 right.
Licensed by the legendary rally driver, this title promised authenticity but delivered a confusing mix of simulation ambition and technical limitations, which was a rebranded port of a PC arcade rally game known as International Rally Championship that released a year prior in 1997. Tommi Makinen Rally looked rough even by 1998 standards. Car models were angular and lacked the detail of contemporary titles. The game attempted realistic lighting but achieved only bland, flat visuals. Trackside scenery was sparse with repetitive assets and aggressive popping. The damage system existed but was purely cosmetic without progressive deformation or mechanical consequence. The physics tried to be simulation orientated but fell short of titles like Rally Masters or Colin McRae. The car's collision detection features were poor, with vehicles randomly crashing on their side or spinning upon impact, with other cars or track elements which wasn't realistic. Weight transfer existed but felt exaggerated and unpredictable. The handling model was totally inconsistent. Sometimes cars would grip unexpectedly, other times they'd slide uncontrollably on surfaces that should provide traction. Jumps felt strange with odd gravity and landing physics that could randomly spin the car. Setup options were limited despite the simulation aspirations. The game featured standard rally surfaces but struggled to differentiate them meaningfully. Gravel felt too similar to tarmac, just slightly more slippery. Snow was distinctively slippery but in an unnatural ice rink way, rather than realistic loose surface physics. Mud was just slow gravel without the dragging heavy sensation it should have. Weather effects were minimal. Rain changed the visual appearance and made things marginally more slippery, but it didn't transform stages the way that it should have done. The stage design was uninspired, with the wide roads that removed challenge and narrow technical sections that felt randomly punishing rather than skillfully difficult. Despite Tommi Makinen's legendary status in rallying, this game failed to honour his legacy. It occupied an awkward middle ground, too complicated for arcade fans and too flawed for simulation enthusiasts. The budget production values showed throughout, and the licensing couldn't overcome fundamental gameplay problems. This is one for completionists only, but one major positive was the sheer amount of playable tracks available across the various game modes that offered more than any other rally games on the PlayStation. Sony's sequel to Rallycross expanded on everything the original did well, while adding visual polish and gameplay depth. Rallycross 2 looked significantly better than its predecessor. Car models were more detailed with improved textures and lighting. The game featured impressive weather effects, including realistic rain, snow and fog that affected visibility dramatically. Trackside scenery was denser with more environmental variety, and objects that satisfyingly affected vehicle handling when hit. The game introduced dynamic lighting with proper headlight functions and effects during night races, and atmospheric lighting during dawn and dusk stages. The damage modelling improved, with more visible deformation and dirt accumulation on the cars. The physics did remain arcade focused, but gained complexity. Weight transfer became more noticeable, and suspension travel was more pronounced and impactful but less refined. Cars still handled accessibly, but required more skill to master. You needed proper braking points and couldn't just power slide everywhere. The vehicle roster expanded with more distinct handling characteristics between different car and truck types. The off-road elements remained, but felt more integrated, requiring timing and positioning rather than just bumping constantly. The AI was much more aggressive this time around, implementing annoying rubber banding techniques and physics to keep races close and tense, but frustrating as a simple lead could turn into a nightmare, as opponents would regularly gain a boost of speed, passing you just before the finish line, stealing you from an almost guaranteed win. Even on easier difficulties, on later tracks in the championship modes, if you crashed early on, the race is technically over, as you simply cannot catch opponents that are in first place, only adding to the frustration. Rallycross 2 made terrain types more distinctive. Mud actually felt heavy and slow. Snow was properly slippery, and gravel offered controllable slides. Weather effects now influenced handling. Rain made surfaces slippery and visibility poor. Snow reduced grip dramatically, and fog forced you to rely on track knowledge. The track design improved with more complex layouts, better integrated shortcuts and environmental hazards like rockfalls that kept you alert. The inclusion of a basic track editor also added more depth and replay value to the experience to test not only your creative skills but challenge yourself and others to truly chaotic racing experiences. As a package, Rallycross 2 improved on the original in many ways. It did maintain the chaotic fun while adding depth even over the simplified controls that gradually moved away from its predecessor's more heavy suspension focused elements. The expanded car and truck roster provided better graphics and improved track design that made it an interesting off-road rally formula that was challenging, but with the aggressive rubber banding AI and changes to the overall control systems, many would believe that it is oftentimes overshadowed by its predecessor. It's not a full-on simulation experience, and it never pretended to be, but as an off-road arcade racer with rally aesthetics, it delivered exactly what it promised. Regardless of its missteps, it was still perfect for party gaming sessions. Released under different names across regions, C3 Racing Championship in some territories and MaxPower Racing in others, this title often flies under the radar when discussing late era PS1 racers. Combining elements of rally and off-road racing within an accessible arcade framework, it delivered a surprisingly well-rounded driving experience that still holds up as one of the PlayStation's most underrated and underappreciated racing games. While not the most technically advanced racer of its time, C3 Racing made strong use of the PlayStation's hardware to deliver fast-paced tracks that spanned various environments, from dusty rally roads to scenic highways and rugged off-road trails. The frame rate remained smooth, and each course carried a distinct sense of atmosphere. The car models, though not officially licensed, were well designed for their era and helped reinforce the game's focus on variety over strict realism. C3 Racing leaned more toward arcade-style handling than full-on simulation, making it instantly approachable, while still offering enough challenge for dedicated players. The handling model was forgiving yet satisfying, allowing players to slide through corners, tackle uneven terrain, and maintain flow through long stages. The inclusion of rally and off-road courses added welcome variety, encouraging players to adapt their driving style to different surfaces. While the game didn't include deep tuning or damage systems, it made up for it with accessible, fast and enjoyable gameplay. One of the game's main strengths was its diverse selection of tracks and locations. From European rally routes to exotic circuits and rugged off-road trails, C3 Racing captured a sense of global adventure. Weather effects and lighting variations added atmosphere to the experience, subtly affecting how each race felt. The rally and off-road modes, while simple by design, provided a fresh contrast to the more traditional tarmac-based races of other PS1 titles. Interestingly, several of the track assets and terrain details were later reworked and reused for TNN Motorsport's Hardcore TR, which also released on the system, another off-road title from the same developer, showing how their design evolved across multiple projects. C3 Racing Championship, or MaxPower Racing, may not have had the brand recognition of Gran Turismo or the realism of Colin McRae Rally, but it carved out its own path as a fun, versatile racer with rally-inspired energy and off-road flair. Its balance of accessibility and challenge, along with its shared DNA with TNN Motorsport's Hardcore TR, makes it a fascinating and enjoyable part of the PlayStation's diverse racing library, a true hidden gem that deserves more appreciation from fans of classic driving games. V-Rally 2, when it released in 1999, brought with it a bigger budget and refined vision, creating what many consider to be the perfect arcade rally experience on the PS1, with a port also being added later with the new Sega Dreamcast console, harnessing the power with vastly superior visuals, with additional features, but often seen as the more difficult of both versions, with the PS1 edition being cited as the most approachable. V-Rally 2 was visually stunning for 1999. The car models received massive upgrades with improved lighting, reflections that changed based on environment, and more detailed bodies. The game introduced proper weather-specific effects and visuals. Rain accumulated realistically on windscreens, snow piled on the car during Swedish stages, and mud splattered progressively during wet conditions. Trackside details increased dramatically with varied spectator models, complex building structures and dynamic objects, and damage effects that were satisfyingly displayed when an object was hit. The lighting engine was impressive, with proper day and night transitions, and headlight effects that actually illuminated the track ahead. The physics stepped closer towards simulation while maintaining accessibility. Weight transfer became more important. You needed to set up for corners properly or face consequences. The suspension model improved with visible compression and extension that affected handling noticeably. Different surfaces now felt distinct. Gravel allowed controlled slides. Tarmac punished overconfidence with understeer. Snow required gentle inputs, and mud dragged the car, making it feel heavy and unresponsive. The damage system expanded to include mechanical failures, push too hard and you'd lose power, or develop handling problems that accumulated over stages. But when we look at the terrain and weather effects, this is where V-Rally truly shined. Each terrain type had distinctive characteristics. The gravel stages featured proper loose surface physics, where you could dig in and feel the car claw for traction. Tarmac stages were faster but demanded precision. Snow stages were treacherous with ice patches that sent you spinning. Mud stages during rain became almost comically difficult with ruts that grabbed at the car. Weather effects transformed stages. Dry gravel was fast and flowing, wet gravel became treacherous, tarmac from grippy to skating rink in the rain. The game even featured progressive track conditions where later cars would face muddier or rougher stages. There would also be a detailed track editor that allowed for even more replay value, being able to design and adjust terrain, surfaces and obstacles to how you see fit, saving them to a memory card for later play to challenge for fast times against friends. Hours alone could be spent just honing your creation skills to develop the perfect track layout. But as a package, V-Rally 2 struck the perfect balance between arcade accessibility and simulation depth. It looked gorgeous, played brilliantly and offered enough content to keep players engaged for months. The career mode was extensive, the multiplayer and track editor system was exceptional, and the range of conditions made every stage feel different. This is the game you'd introduce to friends who claimed rally was boring.
Medium right, long, into bad right, long. Medium right, long, into bad left, long. Medium left, long, into bad left, long. Fast left, very long, tighten, over crest. Medium right, long, open. Medium right, long, into bad right, long. Medium right, long, into bad left, long, into bad left, long. Medium right, very long, open. Fast left, very long, tighten, over crest. Medium right, long, open. Long. Fast right, long. Fast left, long, over crest. Medium left.
International Rally, which could also be known as Konami Rally, regarding some development materials and documents, was Konami's attempt to enter the PlayStation 1 rally market. The game was in development, but never reached commercial release, making it one of rally gaming's most intriguing what-if stories. based on prototype footage and development materials that have surfaced through game preservation efforts, International Rally appeared to be aiming for a middle ground approach between arcade accessibility and simulation depth. Konami had the resources and technical expertise to compete with Codemasters and Eden Games, making its cancellation particularly unfortunate for rally fans. The prototype showed promising graphics for its era. Car models appeared detailed, with clean bodywork and what looked like multiple livery options. The environments featured varied trackside scenery with trees, buildings and crowd models. The lighting engine showed day and night cycles with proper atmospheric effects. The visual aesthetics leaned toward realism rather than the stylized approach of the V-Rally series, suggesting Konami was targeting the simulation-focused Colin McRae audience. Limited gameplay footage suggests that the physics engine was attempting realistic rally handling. Cars showed visible weight transfer and suspension travel over rough terrain. The handling appeared responsive, with cars sliding convincingly on loose surfaces. The game seemed to feature multiple camera angles, including chase cam and hood cam views. Development notes indicated of planned features including vehicle damage, tyre wear and weather effects that would impact handling dynamically. The exact reasons for cancellation remain unclear, but several factors likely contributed. The PlayStation Rally market was becoming crowded by the late 1990s, with established franchises already dominating. Konami may have decided that their resources were better spent on other projects. It could also be that technical challenges or development problems could have pushed the release date too far, making it economically unviable. The transition to PlayStation 2 development may have caused Konami to abandon PS1 projects in favour of next generation titles also. But if we look at it on the grander scale, International Rally as it stands represents an important piece of gaming history. Prototypes have surfaced through game preservation communities, allowing historians and enthusiasts to examine what might have been. These prototypes are playable on emulators and modified hardware, giving us glimpses of Konami's rally vision. The game also serves as a reminder that for every released title, numerous projects were cancelled, and preservation efforts ensure that they aren't completely lost to history. But if we're being honest, while we can't fully review an unreleased game, what exists of International Rally suggests it could have been a strong competitor in the PlayStation Rally market. Konami's technical capabilities and game design experience might have produced something special. The prototype footage shows promise that makes its cancellation disappointing. For modern players interested in game preservation and lost gaming history, seeking out the prototype is worthwhile, as it's a fascinating look into what could have been, and a testament to the importance of preserving gaming's incomplete stories.
3, 2, 1, go! Seven right.
Gran Turismo 2 was primarily a circuit racing masterpiece, but it included a rally mode as a bonus feature. Given Polyphony Digital's technical prowess, how did it handle the dirt? Gran Turismo 2's rally mode benefited from the game's impressive car models. Vehicles looked exceptional with detailed bodies, accurate sponsorship liveries and proper reflections. The rally stages themselves were less impressive than the circuit tracks, featuring simpler trackside details and more basic environmental modelling. But the damage in Gran Turismo 2 was its weakness across all modes, as it was purely cosmetic and minimal, never affecting performance or view. But the gameplay and physics, now this is where Gran Turismo 2's rally mode divided opinion. The physics engine was adapted more for circuit racing, and it showed. Cars felt planted and responsive, but lacked the loose, sliding characteristics of dedicated rally games. The suspension model was detailed. You'd see compression and extension, but it didn't capture the violent, unpredictable movements of real-world rally cars. Weight transfer was realistic, but felt more circuit-orientated than rally-specific. That being said, the sheer amount and variety of cars was unmatched. You could rally anything from classic Group B monsters to modern WRC machines, even unlikely choices like muscle cars or JDM legends. Gran Turismo 2 featured gravel and tarmac rally stages with distinct handling characteristics. Gravel allowed for sliding and drift techniques, rewarding Scandinavian flick entries and power on oversteer. Tarmac stages were essentially light circuit sections that played to Gran Turismo 2's circuit racing strengths, and the stage design was competent but lacked the natural flow and danger of purpose-built rally games. They felt like a modified circuit of tracks rather than authentic rally stages. However, Gran Turismo 2's rally mode was a fun diversion rather than a serious rally simulation, as it did offer the Gran Turismo experience, with exceptional car selection, deep tuning options and solid physics that applied to dirt. Rally enthusiasts would be frustrated by the circuit-focused physics and limited stage design, but fans found it an enjoyable addition to the package. It's worth experiencing for the sheer variety of cars that you can take off-road, even if dedicated rally games did everything else better. Michelin Rally Masters arrived during the peak of the Colin McRae rally era, a time when the Codemaster series dominated the rally scene on the PlayStation. Because of that, Rally Masters never quite got the attention it deserved. Beneath its modest presentation, however, was one of the most realistic and demanding rally simulations available on the PlayStation 1, a game that could truly shine once you adapted to its steep learning curve. While Rally Masters didn't have the visual polish or cinematic flair of its rivals, it captured the grit and atmosphere of real-world rallying well for its time. The cars and tracks may have looked simple, but the stages were designed with a genuine sense of scale and realism, featuring diverse terrain types that challenge players to adapt their driving style. The handling model was where the game set itself apart. Rather than going for an instantly accessible arcade feel, the game would lead more towards simulation. Cars demanded precision, braking, throttle control, and weight transfer all mattered. Early impressions of floaty physics often came down to unfamiliarity, but once mastered, the driving revealed surprising depth. Every slide, jump, and correction felt earned, rewarding players who invested the time to learn its nuances. The game offered a wide range of surfaces and weather conditions, each subtly influencing the driving experience. Rain-slicked roads, dusty gravel, and icy Scandinavian routes all required different techniques, even if the visual effects were limited by the hardware. This attention to the driving feel over visual spectacle gave Michelin Rally Masters a grounded authenticity that's easy to overlook today. Though overshadowed by the Colin McRae Rally series, Michelin Rally Masters remains a hidden gem for those seeking a more simulation-driven rally experience on the PlayStation 1. Its unassuming presentation and challenging physics made it an underdog worth revisiting, a title that, once mastered, delivers a surprisingly rewarding rally experience well beyond its reputation.
4 right, care bank, over crest.
left. Square right. Caution, jump into 1 left. 1 right.
Following the release of Rally Day Africa, Rally Day Europe 2000 carried forward the same arcade rally spirit while shifting focus from the deserts and savannas of Africa to the classic rally landscapes of Europe. While it didn't reinvent the formula, it expanded on what its predecessor did well, offering more varied landscapes, tighter track design and a broader sense of global rally competition. Building on the groundwork set by Rally Day Africa, this sequel delivered brighter, more scenic environments inspired by famous European rally regions, from the French countryside and Italian mountains to the Scottish Highlands. The visuals, while still within the technical limits of the PlayStation, carried a cleaner and more colourful look than before. The game maintained a steady frame rate and presented its stages with smooth performance and a strong sense of speed. Subtle weather effects like rain, fog and snow added atmosphere, enhancing the immersion even if they were more aesthetic than mechanical. Like its predecessor, Rally Day Europe leaned into fast-paced arcade-style handling rather than realism. The emphasis remained on accessible driving, responsive controls, forgiving physics and an easy-to-learn flow that encouraged players to focus on speed and rhythm rather than precision. Each car handled with a satisfying lightness that suited the game's energetic pace, and while the mechanics stayed simple, they contributed to a consistent pick-up and play experience. It was a rally game designed for pure fun, not frustration, which was ideal for players looking for instant action. The European setting gave the developers an opportunity to explore a wider range of environments, from snowy alpine passes to muddy forest trails and high-speed gravel roads. While the surfaces didn't drastically change the vehicle handling, the diversity in scenery and course layout added welcome freshness. The tracks captured the feel of classic European rallies, with sweeping curves, narrow hills and sharp turns that demanded quick reflexes and smooth control. As it stands, Rally Day Europe 2000 didn't aim to compete with the technical depth of the Colin McRae rally games or the cinematic flair of the V-Rally series. Instead, it proudly continued the Rally Day Africa formula with more variety and refined presentation. As an arcade-style racer, it offered a fast, colourful and enjoyable experience that celebrated the spirit of rallying without overcomplicating it. While often overlooked, as like its predecessor, never releasing outside of Japan, Rally Day Europe remains also as an underrated entry in the PlayStation's extensive racing library, a fun and nostalgic title that marked a fitting continuation of the series' adventurous approach. Codemasters returned with Colin McRae Rally 2.0 in the year 2000, and this time they had the experience and technology to push the PlayStation 1 to its limits. Everything received a visual upgrade, car models were more detailed with better reflections and lighting. The damage system became more complex. Individual panels could deform, break off, and windscreen cracks appeared progressively. The trackside scenery became denser with more varied vegetation, improved building models, and better crowd animations. Weather effects were more pronounced, realistic looking rain on the windscreen and fog that genuinely genuinely limited visibility. The replay camera angles were cinematic and made you feel like you were watching actual WRC footage. The physics engine was significantly refined, weight transfer felt more natural, suspension travel was more visible and impactful, and the tyre model differentiated between compound types, introducing proper tyre wear and mechanical damage that accumulated over long rallies, adding strategic depth. Soft tyres offer more grip but wore faster. Hard tyres lasted longer but provided less mechanical grip. The car setup options expanded. You could adjust the ride, height, gear ratios, brake balance and differential settings, each making noticeable differences to the handling. Colin McRae Rally 2.0 expanded to include more intricate stage design and camber changes, mid-corner jumps and elevation shifts that affected handling dynamically. Gravel felt looser or more unpredictable. Snow and ice were genuinely treacherous, requiring completely different techniques, and tarmac rewarded precision but punished aggression. Weather now affected visibility more dramatically. Heavy rain and fog made pace notes absolutely critical. Puddles formed on wet tarmac, affecting grip unpredictably. The mud physics were impressive for the hardware. You could see ruts deepen and feel the car's handling deteriorate as mud accumulated. Colin McRae Rally 2.0 is often considered as the best pure rally experience on the PS1. It refined everything the original did well, added depth without sacrificing accessibility, and pushed the hardware to deliver an experience that felt genuinely next generation. The addition of the arcade mode added more variety to the experience and is equally as much fun as the other modes available, especially playing multiplayer with friends. The only complaints were the still limited car roster and the often demanding difficulty curve that frustrated casual players.
50, jump in, into 5 left, into press, and 6 right, 36.
A port of the PC simulation rally classic, Mobil 1 Rally Championship on PlayStation aimed to continue the success of its more powerful counterpart, with real-life rally simulation games now becoming mainstream in the late 90s due to the overwhelming popularity of Colin McRae Rally on the PlayStation. PC games were stepping up a gear with more realistic gameplay, physics and detail for their time, raising the bar higher for console racers to catch up. But as is often the case due to console limitations and older hardware, attempts were often made to port many popular games to the PlayStation, but often with mixed results. Rally Championship would fall somewhere in the middle ground of this category, but still brought with it some positive plus points. Mobil 1 Rally Championship prioritised technical accuracy over visual flair. Car models were detailed with proper sponsor liveries and authentic body shapes, but lacked the polish of contemporary titles. The frame rate was solid, which was crucial for the precise driving it demanded. Trackside scenery was functional rather than beautiful. You got the necessary information about upcoming corners and surface changes without distracting eye candy. The damage modelling wasn't as extensive compared to similar games on the console. This is often seen as one of the most simulation focused rally games on the PS1. The physics engine was complex and unforgiving. Weight transfer was crucial. Suspension setup dramatically affected the handling, which felt heavy but twitchy, requiring smooth inputs rather than proper technique. Rush a corner and you'd understeer into the scenery. Brake too late and you'd lock up and slide, often to a point feeling unforgiving that could make or break a stage. The game demanded you learn proper rally driving, trail braking, weight transfer manipulation and reading the road ahead. Setup options were somewhat extensive, with each choice making notable differences, but the handling element sadly is the game's weak point, as it doesn't feel as realistic as it should have done. The terrain modelling was very detailed. Gravel had multiple types: loose gravel, compact gravel and degraded gravel, each affecting handling in different ways. Tarmac rewarded smoothness, but any grass or gravel on the surface would reduce grip unpredictably. Snow and ice were brutally difficult, requiring completely different techniques. The game modelled camber changes, mid-corner bumps and surface transitions that affected handling realistically. Weather effects were functional. Rain reduced grip significantly and affected visibility, but the game prioritised physical accuracy over visual spectacle. On the surface, Mobil 1 Rally Championship was a simulation game aimed at purists, but it lacked the accessibility and presentation polish of Colin McRae or even that of more detailed PC counterparts. But it did offer an attempt at realistic physics in some shape or form, often making making the gameplay challenging and frustrating for purists. However, its steep learning curve meant it remained a niche title that casual fans avoided. If you had the patience to learn its systems, it does become more rewarding over time, but it greatly lacked the complexity needed compared to other rally experiences on the PlayStation.
Right 4, tighten. Square left.
Released in 2002, when the PlayStation 2 had already taken centre stage, WRC Arcade arrived as one of the final rally titles for the original PlayStation. Despite being released late in the console's lifespan, it stood out as a surprisingly solid and enjoyable racer, one that offered fans a more accessible arcade-focused rally experience, wrapped in some of the most visually impressive graphics ever seen for a racing game on Sony's first console. For a PS1 game released at the dawn of the PS2 era, WRC Arcade looked remarkably good. The official WRC license brought authentic car liveries and recognisable rally settings to life, with vibrant track environments and well-detailed vehicle models. The lighting reflections and sense of motion gave the game a polished presentation few late-generation PS1 racers could even match. While the hardware was showing its age, the developers pushed it impressively close to its limits, resulting in one of the most visually refined rally games on the platform. True to its name, WRC Arcade leaned toward fast, accessible gameplay rather than deep simulation. It focused on instant fun, responsive controls, forgiving handling, and a brisk pace that kept races exciting from start to finish. While it didn't aim for the technical precision of Colin McRae rally, it delivered an energetic rally experience that emphasised speed and spectacle. The game's approachable physics made it easy for newcomers to enjoy while still rewarding players who mastered its cornering rhythm and timing to each stage. The game featured a variety of rally environments, from snowy mountain routes to dusty gravel trails and winding tarmac stages. The track design struck a balance between accessibility and challenge, offering wide roads that encourage fast-paced driving and confident slides. While the weather effects were more visual than mechanical, they added atmosphere and flair to each location. The overall presentation and pace gave the game a distinct personality that set it apart from more technical rally sims of the time. Even as it stands, while arriving at the height of the PlayStation 2's dominance, WRC Arcade could easily have been overlooked. But for those who gave it a chance, discovered a fun, fast and surprisingly beautiful send-off for rally fans on the original PlayStation. Its arcade-style handling, strong presentation and authentic WRC flair made it a memorable part of the console's racing legacy. Even today, it stands as one of the most polished and underappreciated rally titles of the PS1 era, a final lap that proved the system still had plenty of life left in it.
Easy left, easy right. Easy left. Long, medium right. Easy left. Easy left. Medium left. Long, easy left. Long, easy right. Medium left. Caution, jump.
These unreleased prototypes and cancelled ports represent an important aspect of gaming history that preservation efforts are increasingly focused on. Every generation has numerous cancelled projects, and the PS1 era was no exception. Rally racing was a hot genre in the late 1990s, attracting publishers who hoped to capitalise on the sport's popularity, and the success of titles like Colin McRae Rally and V-Rally. Both International Rally and Screamer Rally faced a brutally competitive market. By 1990-2000, Colin McRae Rally had already established a simulation standard. V-Rally dominated the arcade space, and smaller titles struggled for attention. New entries needed significant innovation or major marketing budgets just to even succeed. Konami and Milestone likely recognised these challenges and made difficult decisions to cancel projects rather than release it into an oversaturated market. The gaming preservation community has worked to uncover, document and make playable these lost pieces of history. International Rally prototypes circulate, allowing collectors, preservationists and enthusiasts to experience what might have been. These efforts ensure that cancelled games aren't completely erased from history, providing valuable insights into development processes, technical challenges, and the game industry's business realities. These cancelled games remind us that gaming history isn't just about successful releases. The projects that failed, the ports that never happened, and the ambitious ideas that couldn't be realised are equally as important for understanding how the industry has evolved. They show us the risks developers took, the technical limitations they faced, and the business pressures that shaped what actually reached store shelves. If we look at the comparisons between all of the games on this list, there is a massive difference between the quality and the variations that are on display. But looking from the best to the worst, starting with Colin McRae Rally 2.0, it stands as the best pure rally simulation on the PlayStation 1. Its refined physics, extensive damage modelling, strategic depth through tyre choice and car setup, and authentic rally atmosphere made it a definitive hardcore experience. The game demanded skill but rewarded dedication with the most satisfying rallying driving on the platform. Then there's V-Rally 2, which represents the peak of arcade rally racing. It successfully balanced accessibility with depth, offering gorgeous visuals, exciting handling, extensive content and phenomenal multiplayer systems. This is the game you'd introduce to friends, the one that proved rally racing could be immediately fun without sacrificing long-term engagement. But if we also look at the first Colin McRae Rally, this deserves even more recognition for establishing the entire template. While surpassed by its sequel, it introduced the console, genre and players alike to the authentic rally racing experience and set the standards for everything that came after it. But we also have to give a brief mention to Michelin Rally Masters, which also represents one of the most underrated yet authentic rally experiences on the PlayStation. While it didn't have the refined polish of the Colin McRae series, but for many it was equally as rewarding. But if we look here at the middle tier of all of these games, Total Drivin tried to become an all-in-one package. While not excelling in any one particular area, it was deemed good enough and better than expected, proving that unique ideas can flourish under the right conditions. V-Rally, taking massive inspiration from the success of Sega Rally. This would be among the first rally games ever released on the PlayStation, which also similarly pioneered the accessible approach, proving that there was a huge audience for arcade rally experiences. Even moving on to WRC, which was a late generation rally game that offered increasing in-depth simulation physics, while focusing on arcade that had official licenses, but was one of the most well-renowned, well-rounded and most visually stunning racing games of its time on the console, that often flies under the radar due to the release of the PlayStation 2 in and around that time. But for fans of rally games on the PlayStation 1, really do need to give this one a look. But if we look at both Rally to Africa and Rally to Europe 2000, these are pure underrated classics in their grandest form, as they simply are the PlayStation's closest attempt to the success of Sega Rally, both in the arcade and on the Sega Saturn. With bright visuals, great use of tracks, details, environments, vehicles, even though it's in a more cartoony style format, it offered increasing depth and just pure arcade fun. The only letdown of these titles was the fact is that it only released in Japan. Had it released outside it would have been a whole different story. Even moving on to Rallycross, which succeeded in doing something different for its time, mixing off-road and rally racing together that prioritised chaos and fun over authenticity. Its great use of suspension physics and realism was way ahead of anything seen at the time, and in many ways did help to set the stage for a lot of other games that came after it. If we look at Gran Turismo 2's rally mode, it was a fun diversion that leveraged Gran Turismo's strengths, with car variety and tuning depth. Even if the rally physics weren't as refined as dedicated titles, it was still a really good addition to the package. But if we look at the games that had potential, that simply just fell short. It's not to say that they're bad games, but they could have been better in most regards. If we look at C3 Racing or MaxPower Racing, it included rally as an afterthought to off-road content, but it also resulted in a very solid experience without the focus of traditional rally style gameplay. If it had official licenses and themes surrounding it, it could quite possibly have become one of the greatest rally specific games on the console, but as it stands, it's still a very underrated experience that is worth a try at least. But if we look at Mobil 1 Rally Championship, it tried to serve the hardcore simulation crowd, but was met with uncompromising physics and extensive setup options. Its niche appeal limited to its audience, but for purists, it would offer one of the most frustrating experiences that you could have of any rally game on the console, because it didn't fare up well compared to the PC counterpart. Now, it's not to say that the graphics were bad, just the overall handling physics of each of the cars was definitely its letdown, as it was too wallowy and vague for it to be enjoyable. Even if we look at the second Rallycross game, which had lots of potential, but taking away most of the elements that made the first game so appealing. But on a bigger picture, it is a very good solid game, but with some annoying systems that can be more frustrating than enjoyable. The use of the rubber banding AI and just overall difficulty really lets it down. But other than that, if you can deal with those missteps, it is a fairly decent title to try out. But if we look at the lesser of the games released on the system, Tommi, Makinen Rally potentially wasted a legendary license on mediocre execution that neither satisfied simulation fans or arcade enthusiasts. It had some positive elements with regards to the track variety that was on offer, which is still among the largest collection of tracks available in any game on the PlayStation. But it's just the overall gameplay and just annoying physics hampered the experience. But then if we look at Ohlins Hyper Rally, which represented quite possibly the earliest example of PlayStation rally experiences, but it also demonstrated the early development struggles of these titles, which was quickly eclipsed by superior games not too long after. But it's still a good look back over to the early ideas of rally titles on the console, for those reasons alone, but to many it remains unknown because it was only ever released in Japan. Games like Ohlins Hyper Rally and V-Rally showed early attempts of developers learning the PlayStation 1 hardware architecture. These titles featured simpler car models, basic trackside scenery and limited weather effects. The visual style varied from realistic attempts to stylised colourful approaches, with frame rates often being sacrificed for visual complexity. But if we move on to the midpoint of the PlayStation's life cycle, you had games like Colin McRae Rally, V-Rally 2 and Rally Masters, which showed mastery of the PlayStation 1's capabilities, with car models becoming more detailed with better graphics and textures and lighting. Damage modelling improved dramatically with progressive deformation. Weather effects became more sophisticated with rain accumulation, fog and proper day and night cycles. Developers learned to balance visual ambition with performance, maintaining stable frame rates while improving detail. But towards the end of the lifespan, we would see some notable differences, mostly with Colin McRae Rally 2.0, which represented the visual peak, with refined graphics, sophisticated lighting, comprehensive damage, and atmospheric effects that pushed the PlayStation 1 to its absolute limits. However, late titles like WRC also showed that late productions could still stand out regardless of release date. With regards to the visual details, the best looking games prioritise frame rate stability, clear visibility of the track ahead, and satisfying feedback, damage, mud accumulation and weather effects. Games that sacrifice performance over visual complexity, like some budget titles, often ended up looking worse due to inconsistent presentation. Even if we look at the comparisons between the different games that were available, if you look at arcade versus simulation, the PlayStation 1 Rally library split between two different philosophies. V-Rally, Total Drivin and WRC Arcade prioritised accessibility with forgiving physics that let anyone have fun immediately, while Colin McRae Rally and Rally Masters demanded proper technique and punished mistakes. Both approaches found audiences, proving the market could support different styles. Even going back to early games which barely modelled suspension travel or weight transfer, by the late era of the PlayStation, games like Rallycross and Colin McRae Rally 2.0 featured sophisticated suspension physics where you'd see compression, extension and felt the handling consequences. Weight transfer became crucial for proper corner technique. Brake to load the front, turn in, then power out, transferring weight to maintain speed out of a corner. What's also another thing to point out is that earlier titles also made minimal distinction between gravel, tarmac and snow, even mud, with more advanced games like V-Rally 2 and Colin McRae 2.0 and even Rally Masters made each surface feel distinct. Gravel allowed controlled slides and rewarded smooth inputs. Tarmac punished aggression with understeer. Snow required gentle throttle application and mud felt heavy and dragging. The best games made you adapt technique to surface conditions. But even if you look purely even at the damage physics, the damage evolved from purely cosmetic scratches to comprehensive systems affecting performance, handling and visibility, which was more notable in the Colin McRae games, with the damage elements forcing you to lose rallies. Accumulate too much and your car becomes undrivable. This added strategic depth. Push hard and risk terminal damage, or drive conservatively and lose time. The best rally games modelled aspects of surface behaviour, with gravel being loose, allowing slides but requiring careful throttle control. With tarmac, high grip rewarding smooth inputs but punishing errors with understeer. For snow and ice, minimal grip requiring gentle inputs with proper weight transfer. Mud, heavy dragging sensation and accumulated on cars affecting performance. And even with sand, loose but different from gravel, more forgiving but slower. The weather impacts and advanced games made weather transformative, with rain reducing the grip dramatically, affecting visibility, creating puddles that often affected the handling unpredictably. Snow made everything slippery, reduced visibility in heavy conditions, and made it even more treacherous. The fog limited visibility, forcing reliance on co-driver calls and track knowledge. And the dry weather, maximum grip but dustier conditions affecting visibility for cars following close by. But out of the best games of the list, they let you interact with the environments, hit trees and risk totaling your vehicle, plough through obstacles, splash through puddles, creating spray effects to the surrounding areas. This made stages feel alive and reactive rather than static corridors. But if we really look at what PlayStation rally games have taught us, is that these rally games establish principles that influence future racing games. That authentic physics matter. If we look at Colin McRae Rally, it proved console players wanted proper simulation depth, influencing the Dirt series and more modern rally games. It also proves that accessibility has value. V-Rally showed that arcade handling could coexist with rally authenticity, teaching developers that not every game needs punishing difficulty. But it also pinpoints that presentation sells. Games with strong visual identity, dramatic damage modelling and atmospheric weather effects resonated more than technically superior with bland alternatives. Content variety also mattered. Players wanted career modes, diverse car rosters, varied locations and multiple game modes to maintain long-term engagement. And we also needed to see the physics match the visual aesthetics. And we would see this in some games where physics didn't match what players saw on screen, suspension not reacting properly, weather not affecting handling, and felt wrong and disappointed players. But even with all of these elements, these PS1 rally games did manage to push the hardware limitations in many respects. Sophisticated physics engines running at acceptable frame rates, progressive damage systems requiring complex collision detection, dynamic weather affecting both visuals and handling, large complex stages with varied terrain and elevation changes, and even fun aspects with split-screen multiplayer systems that helped to maintain performance. These achievements also demonstrated what dedicated developers could accomplish within limited hardware, establishing techniques and approaches that benefited future console generations. These interesting PS1 rally games introduced millions to rallying as a sport. Many players discovered drivers like Colin McRae, Tommi Makinen and Carlos Sainz through these games. The titles preserved a snapshot of 1990s rally culture, the Group A cars, the legendary drivers, the classic stages. For motorsport preservation, these games are valuable historical documents. The PlayStation 1 Rally Racing Library represents a fascinating snapshot of a genre finding its identity. From Colin McRae Rally simulation authenticity to V-Rally's arcade excitement, from Rallycross's off-road chaos to the experimental ideas of Total Drivin, the platform offered something for every type of rally fan, and also plenty of warnings about what not to do. But if we look at some of the key takeaways, we also saw that the PS1 pushed from basic early efforts like Ohlins Hyper Rally to the visual sophistication of Colin McRae Rally 2.0, proving dedicated developers could achieve remarkable results within limited hardware systems. The platform supported multiple physics philosophies, hardcore simulation for purists, accessible arcade for casual fans and everything in between. This diversity enriched the library and proved no single approach was correct. The best games made surfaces and conditions feel distinct and transformative. Gravel, tarmac, snow and mud each demanded different techniques, while weather effects added strategic depth and challenge. The unreleased prototypes with International Rally and Screamer Rally remind us that gaming history includes what never was. Preservation efforts ensure these projects aren't forgotten, providing valuable insights into development processes and industry challenges. But what made the best stand out? Colin McRae Rally 2.0 and V-Rally 2 succeeded through refined physics, comprehensive content, sophisticated damage systems and atmospheric presentation, and respect for both players' intelligence and the sport itself. Games like Total Drivin, WRC Arcade, even Michelin Rally Masters, provided experimental attempts to take the genre in new interesting directions that in many ways also aided in the modern genre we see today. This unique PS1 rally library influenced everything that came after, it really did. The Dirt series traces directly to the Colin McRae Rally series. Modern arcade racers learned from V-Rally's accessibility. Even current simulation titles owe debts to Rally Masters and Rallycross's uncompromising physics. These games weren't just products of their time, they were foundations for genres that continue thriving today. For modern players interested in gaming history, the PlayStation 1 Rally library rewards exploration. The best titles remain genuinely fun and impressive, showcasing what passionate developers could achieve with 1990s technology. But the worst of the titles also serve as a cautionary tale, but also allow to preserve historical curiosities. Together, they all tell a story of a genre's formative years and a console generation that wasn't afraid to experiment. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the many interesting PS1 rally games that released on the console, make sure to check out more individual videos on the channel where we explore and deep dive into these games that define a generation. Be sure to like, subscribe and even leave a hype on the video, and I'd be interested to hear what your comments are of these particular and unique games and which is your favourite of this PlayStation 1 rally library, as the whole idea is to keep preserving these games so that they'll last for a long time. Also be sure to check out my Patreon page if you're interested in supporting the channel, where you will also get exclusive early access to more content, behind the scenes and member only live streams, where we can dive more into the vast library of the many cool and interesting games of the PlayStation 1. In the meantime, however, keep those pace notes accurate and your car on the tarmac, and if you want to see more PlayStation 1 off-road racing content, you can do so right here. And as always, keep those gaming memories alive.